Am I wearing a kilt? Oh, Jesus! Okay.
It's a dream again.
Yeah. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Yeah, I am wearing a kilt. There is a reason. I'll get to that later. What I actually want to talk about is the time I was trying to have a nervous breakdown. I just want to show of hands. Has anyone here tried consciously to avoid a nervous breakdown? Okay. Has anyone had the rare pleasure and delight of actually having one? Okay, that's good. That's good. I tried to have one at one point, and it does actually relate to this kilt. So, it is 2002. Yeah, I'm old. I'm working for the Ministry of Transportation in Toronto. I'm a policy writer. I have been a tech writer for years, and after 9/11, that company completely dissolved. So now I'm working for the Ministry of Transport, and I'm trying to have a nervous breakdown for a very good reason. My father is sick. Now, my father had lost a kidney around a year before, and he's gotten sicker and sicker after that fact, and we're not quite sure what it is. And not knowing about this is not a good thing psychologically. And I have this theory that if I have a nervous breakdown, I can stop fighting the nervous breakdown. I mean, I could at least hit bottom and then have to claw my way forward. And I'm working in the Ministry of Transport in Toronto, and it's this enormous complex, and they've got all these big underground tunnels. So I'm walking up and down these tunnels every 10 or 15 minutes, trying to compose myself, hoping I'm either going to snap or I'm going to wake up and think, I can deal with this. I can deal with my sick father. I can deal with 8 months of unemployment before the job, all of that stuff. And it's not a particularly easy thing to do. And this gets accelerated one afternoon when I'm away from my desk and my mother is called. She's left a voicemail. I get to my desk and the voicemail reads like this. Hi, honey, it's your mother. Your grandmother is not answering the phone, and I'm driving to Port Colborne to see if she's okay. Could you do me a favor, please, and call the police and have them be there in case we have to break into the house? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye, hon. Okay, so now I'm worried about my grandmother and my father. And I have to convince the police to break into my grandmother's house. Anybody ever done that? It's not as straightforward as you'd think. Firstly, I'm calling the OPP, and I'm trying to find out, listen, is there a police department in Port Colborne, a place I have visited and never actually lived in? They said no. They sent me to a switchboard. I have to call somebody else. When I get to that switchboard, they put me on hold. At the same time, this is long enough ago that Google Maps was terrible, so I've got a phone book in front of me to find my grandmother's address because I know how to drive there. I have no idea what her address is. I'm just going to call them and say, hey, break into my grandmother's house? In Port Colborne, it's on the lake, like everything else is, and I'm trying to deal with this. I'm worried about my father. He's gone into chemotherapy for the first time that day. It's already a lousy day. And I'm trying to deal with this, and I'm trying to call them, and I can't get through to the OPP, and I finally realize, you're an idiot. I work for the Ministry of Transport. There was an OPP dispatch next to my office. So I'm on the phone with them on a landline saying, yeah, you need to go to 174 Lakeshore Road, Port Colborne. I'm giving you permission to kick down the door. And if you decide that this is a prank call, walk next door at Downsview. I'm at the Ministry of Transport on the 4th floor next to the coffee machine. And as I am on a phone trying to explain this to the OPP, my mother calls my cell phone and says, okay, honey, we have gotten into the house. Her neighbor let us in, and your grandmother's had a stroke, and she's not going to make it to the night. We are taking her to Welland. I'll talk to you soon. And I'm okay. Just, can you please say goodbye for me? That nervous breakdown is really, really close by this point. I walk up to my boss. I explain the situation. He's a decent guy. He's already worried about me because of my father. He said, go home. Just go home. But I don't go home. I go to a pub nearby my house, and I'm waiting for my wife and her business partner to show up and join me. This is remarkable. This is the one time this has happened in the history of Toronto. It's where I was living at the time. I walk into a bar. I am not in the best of moods, and I say, I want a double of Jameson, please. Bartender pours it. I knock it back. 2 seconds later, I say, I need another shot, please, double. I knock it back. Guy looks at me and says, bad day? I say, yeah, my dad's got cancer, and my grandmother just died. My wife and her partner show up a couple minutes later, And they're taking me to a table. I look at the bartender and say, what do I owe you for the shots? He goes, no, it's on me. You had a bad day. I'm the only person in Toronto who ever got free drinks from a bartender. I get to the table, I've got Guinness, I've got another couple of shots, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm done. I'm done with this. I cannot deal with this. I cannot deal with any more stress. I'm going to have I want the nervous breakdown. And I'm there, and they try to talk me down from this, and by the end of the evening, after 1 or 2 hours, I have reached a certain peace. Okay, my grandmother passed away. She was a decent woman. She had a good life. I can deal with this. And my mother calls my cell and goes, hi, honey. Your grandmother actually is conscious. And they're going to fly her from Welland to St. Mike's in Toronto. So I'm in this weird situation where I have just come to terms with the death of my grandmother to find out she's not dead. I don't know what to do. My wife is literally taking me by the hand saying, we're going to take you home now, big guy. And as I'm walking out, I look at the bartender. He's looking at me really sympathetically, and I feel this great weight, and I say, okay, dude, this is a really long story, but she's actually not as dead as I thought she was. So what do I owe you for the drinks? He looks at me, complete stranger, puts his hand on my shoulder and says, go home. I went home, and there was one coping mechanism I'd had for a couple of months. All this time I'm worried about my dad. All this time I was unemployed. It's Chinese food. There was a good place close to us called South China. They had amazing Chinese food, and that was the coping mechanism. You know, if I'd had bad news, I'd talk to my wife and I'd say, so yeah, Dad's not doing well. He hasn't been awake for more than 2 hours over the last 48 hours, and he's almost incontinent, and he's not making a lot of sense. And he had some food, but he threw it up, but we're hoping tomorrow's going to be better. So, who's for Chinese? I went home that night from the bar, and we had some Chinese food, and I'm trying to deal with this, and I'm trying to deal with the complete nervous breakdown and the fact that my grandmother is not dead. I mean, I'm delighted that she's not dead, but I'm kind of surprised that she's not dead, and 2 days later, I'm sitting at St. Michael's Hospital at my grandmother's bedside. My cousin Hillary is there. My cousin Hillary is having a delightful, cheerful conversation about how great life is, and my grandmother is there, perhaps not in the best of shape, but she can hear us, and she can talk. I am past that point. I can't put on cheerful. All I'm doing is sitting there staring at her like this. And at one point I said, it's really nice to see you, Nan. I'm just a little surprised. My grandmother, God bless her, goes, that's nice, dear. Stop staring at me. Once again, that nervous breakdown is getting a little closer every day. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because around 2 days later, as we're trying to get ready for things, as we are getting ready to move her to a long-term care facility, and about the same time that it has been decided that my father can't handle a mattress anymore. He needs an air mattress to avoid bed sores. All of this coming together at the same time, and my grandmother passes away in her sleep. She is cremated a couple of days later, and her ashes are put into an urn, and the urn is put into a box, and the box is put into a cupboard at her house in Port Colborne. It has been decided that we are not going to inter her until my father has either gotten better or passed away. And that happened 5 months later. That's an entirely different monologue. It took a long time. It was not a good experience. Why am I wearing a kilt? Because this is what I was wearing 7 months after she passed away when we finally managed to inter her in Port Colborne. It was in July of 2003. My mother's family, Scots and Irish. So I'm wearing the kilt out of a sign of respect. And we have not had an easy couple of months. My father took a long time. It was a horrible experience, and everybody is beyond ragged, but it's becoming evident that we have to do something with my grandmother's ashes because we're beginning to channel her. I mean, every time we go to the house, we were kind of using it as a summer home. I would show up with my wife sometimes, and I'd open the cupboard and go, hey, Nan, how you doing? Look good. Hey, a little dusty there. Driving with the top down? It's okay. There we go. I'll take care of that. Boom. I stole that line from Sam Kinison. I want to apologize to his estate and to my grandmother's estate at the same time. But finally, we're going to do the interment, and I am wearing this. I am wearing the kilt and the sporran and the jacket. It is July. The kilt is actually pretty comfortable, but it does attract mosquitoes. And I'm very conscious, and it's been a very heavy couple of months. My mother is a sacristan in the Anglican Church, so she is going to be delivering the homily at the interment, and we're at this cemetery, and we are going to inter her next to my grandfather, who died 15 years before. And I'm thinking, I'd never had the nervous breakdown. I got away with it, and I can deal with everything that had happened. I can deal with my father's death. He's in a better place. I can deal with my grandmother's death. She is also in a better place. I can deal with pretty much everything except for one thing, the dirt. Because they've dug a hole for the ashes, and there's dirt under a tarp. And I'm thinking, that is insult to injury. I can't deal with this. Don't you deserve better than being put under dirt? I keep thinking you go back to the earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, blah, blah, blah. I'm insulted by the dirt. I understand it's got a job to do, but I do not want to deal with it. And I'm trying to concentrate on this. My mother is reading this beautiful homily. I'm there. I'm trying to avoid the mosquitoes. I'm considering my grandmother. Everything is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. I'm thinking, finally, I don't want the nervous breakdown. Like, this would not be a good time right now. But eventually the homily is over, and since I have the longest arms, I'm the guy who's been volunteered to place the urn into the earth. I'm wearing a kilt.
Wait.
Allow me to demonstrate without being too much detail. Trying to keep my legs together as to not moon my mourning family and whoever else is at the cemetery that particular day. And this is, I'm getting close to laughing because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. There are mosquitoes. It's hot. I'm in a kilt. Both of my aunts have shown up. They've got beach chairs to sit there for the service. Everything looks so incredibly weird. And I'm trying to face this with the proper reverence, and I can't quite do it until I feel the urn hit the earth at the bottom. I'm thinking, wow. My grandmother used to bounce me on her knee. How weird would that be as a child? What do you do? Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a baby, and I'll be the guy who's lowering you into your grave later on. How are you? That sobered me up really quickly. And the service is over. My mother's homily is over. I'm thinking, okay, if nothing else, maybe you get acceptance, right? 5 stages of death and dying, denial, anger, blah, blah, blah. Acceptance. I'm almost at the acceptance point. I'm even looking at the pile of dirt. I'm not so resentful at this point for some reason. It's like I can hear it talking to me. It's saying, it's okay, kid. We'll take it from here. And then one of my aunts says, Michael, can you straighten out the urn? It's crooked. I'm not reaching back into the grave. Well, it's a little crooked. Can't you just straighten it up a little bit? No, I am not going to straighten this up a little bit. The earth has been consecrated. Well, I don't know if that actually, you're not going to unconsecrate the earth, Michael. It was a weird day. All I kept thinking about at the end of it was earth. Dust. I couldn't get away from that whole idea, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This usually had a pin on it. These are my grandfather's colors. That's why I was wearing it. And it had a pin. That was for the Smith family. And the motto of the family, I forget what it is in Latin. Translated into English, it means, touch not a cat, but a glove. It sounds better in Latin, but I know what it meant. I had been given that pin by my grandmother when I got married. So, as my family are talking about the homily and whether the urn was properly aligned with the grave and what they're going to have for lunch, I said, can I have a minute, please? Took off the pin, left it on the grave. I went back around 6 months later, and it was still there. By this point, it was rusted, and it was covered with a fine layer of dirt. That's what we go back to, right? It's the same way that my dad's ashes. He was cremated as well, and they're in a box on my mother's dresser. And every so often, she will lovingly take off the dust at the top. God's equivalent of that's all, folks. So, who's for Chinese? Thanks very much for your time, and good night.